We live in an age where everything seems to demand constant movement. We scroll through screens, chase after signs, repeat phrases and techniques. Yet the more we search, the further away what we desire seems to be. This is the vibrational trap of the frequency of seeking. In searching endlessly, we emit the signal that we still do not have. Bruce Lipton shows us, through epigenetics, that unconscious beliefs shape not only our perception, but also the very biology of our cells. In other words, when the mind is trapped in the sensation of lack, the body reinforces this chemical and vibrational state, keeping the cycle active. It is not conscious desire that creates. It is the frequency sustained in the subconscious. Neville Goddard goes further by affirming that the state of consciousness is the true cause of external reality. Seeking outside of oneself, waiting for signs or techniques to bring change, is to reinforce the illusion of separation. What you call reality is nothing more than the faithful reflection of the state you have already accepted within as true. This is the bridge between science and spirituality. Manifestation does not respond to scattered thoughts or mental wishes, but to the coherent energy field you sustain day after day. The universe does not move by the anxiety of one who asks, but by the silent coherence of one who already is. And perhaps this is the restlessness you feel when jumping from practice to practice or scrolling through endless content. This movement, however well-intentioned, is the very block, because the hurry to search is what prevents receiving. And it is exactly here that the shift begins, the passage from the frequency of seeking to the frequency of receiving. Endless seeking may appear, at first glance, as an act of courage and dedication. But in vibrational terms, it works as a continuous confirmation of absence. When someone lives in a state of seeking, they emit to the field the signal that what they desire does not yet exist in their experience, and the field responds by amplifying exactly that perception. It is like walking on a treadmill. No matter how much effort you make, the sensation is one of movement without arrival. The body wears out, the mind exhausts itself, yet the starting point and the destination remain the same. Seeking, in this sense, is not expansion, it is repetition. Many turn this search into a kind of spiritual entertainment. They consume books, videos, and techniques without allowing any of it to truly integrate. They are constantly inspired, but never breathe deeply enough to embody. The result is a collection of information that never becomes transformation. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body does not respond to the volume of information, but to the state we repeat. While seeking remains active, the nervous system vibrates in urgency, reinforcing the chemical signature of lack. Neville Goddard would add, "It is not how much you learn, but the state of consciousness you inhabit that shapes your reality." Recognizing the frequency of seeking is the first step in leaving it. It is realizing that chasing what is missing is different from tuning into what already is. Seeking may be movement, but only receiving is creation. Our nervous system learns patterns the way one records a background soundtrack. If for years we have lived in urgency, always searching for the next answer, the next piece of content, the next technique, the body registers that state as normality. Thus, even in the presence of peace, it remains on alert, demanding new stimuli to keep the scarcity cycle alive. This repetition creates an invisible conditioning. The mind believes the answer is always somewhere else, never here. It is like a radio that, even tuned to the correct station, insists on turning the dial, unable to recognize that it has already found the frequency. The noise does not come from the lack of an answer, but from the inability to remain present with it. Bruce Lipton reminds us that biology obeys the environment as it is perceived. When the body reads a state of lack, it reorganizes hormones and cells into survival mode. And in that state, there is no room for creative expansion. The quantum field receives the message of "it is still not enough" and returns experiences that confirm exactly that narrative. Joe Dispenza shows, through neuroscience, that a brain conditioned by the past fires the same circuits whenever confronted with the unknown. The repetition of the old becomes more comfortable than the opening to the new. It is not a lack of potential, but an unconscious attachment to a familiar chemistry of anxiety. Recognizing this conditioning is liberating. When we understand that urgency is not a signal of real need, but the reflection of a body habituated to alert. We can breathe, pause, and teach the system a new frequency. It is in this space that seeking begins to transform into receiving. In quantum physics, there is a fascinating principle. The observer's consciousness influences the behavior of the particle being observed. It is not merely about seeing, but about participating in creation. The act of looking with intention already modifies the outcome. This same principle applies to everyday life. When someone places themselves in the position of the anxious seeker, they observe the world through the lens of lack. And as a reflection, what appears are more proofs of absence. The consciousness that seeks reinforces the very void it intends to fill. Neville Goddard said that the state of consciousness is the cause of external reality. Thus, observing life through the eyes of scarcity is to select timelines where scarcity confirms itself. Bruce Lipton adds, unconscious beliefs, often invisible, shape our biology, and that biology conditions how we interpret events. This means the observer is never neutral. The emotion that accompanies the gaze colors what is seen. Joy, gratitude, and trust illuminate details once unnoticed. Fear and lack darken even paths already open. The field does not respond to words, but to the vibrational tone of the observer. The shift happens when we stop looking as those who seek proof and begin looking as those who recognize presence. At that moment, consciousness stops confirming absence and begins to expand the reality that already pulses within us. The human mind has been trained to believe that control is synonymous with safety. We plan, anticipate, calculate, as if life were a predictable equation. Yet this excess of control arises from a vibrational root, the fear that something might slip away, that nothing will happen without constant effort. When we try to manifest from a place of lack, we attempt to manipulate every detail, as though the field were a machine that responds to external buttons. But the quantum field does not respond to the force of rational will, but to the coherence between emotion, thought, and body. The anxiety of control generates only more signs of disorder. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body responds to the environment as it is perceived. If we believe we must control everything, the biological system enters chronic vigilance. Stress hormones circulate, and the body prepares to fight or flee, even when there is no real threat. The result is exhaustion, not creation. Neville Goddard brings the complementary key. Manifestation does not happen because we did everything right, but because we assume the consciousness of already being. While controlling, we declare separation. While inhabiting, we declare fulfillment. Control shouts, "I don't have it yet." Trust whispers, "I already am." Letting go of control does not mean giving up, but aligning. It is the difference between rowing against the current and adjusting the sails to the wind. When we stop pushing, the natural flow of life reveals paths that rigidity of the mind could never access. In a world that exalts speed and productivity, stillness is often mistaken for passivity. But in the vibrational field, silence is an act of immense power. It is there that energy stops dispersing into frantic searches and condenses into clarity. Stillness creates inner space for consciousness to align with the field. When we stop seeking external proof, we access the subtle language of intuition. It is like silencing background noise to hear a melody that has always been playing. Bruce Lipton shows that states of deep relaxation alter the body's chemistry, reducing stress hormones and opening space for genes of regeneration and balance. Joe Dispenza adds, "In meditative silence, the brain and heart find coherence, and this coherence reorganizes perception of reality." Stillness is not escape, but courage. It requires moving through the initial anxiety of not doing anything to discover that the simple act of sustaining presence is, in itself, creative. Stillness takes us out of the role of seekers and repositions us as stable emitters. It is in this state that the greatest leaps occur, not as explosive effort, but as gentle synchronicity. When the body rests, the field responds. When the mind quiets, reality reorders itself. Stillness is the portal through which the invisible manifests into form. Deep consciousness does not speak in shouts, but in whispers. It does not compete with the noise of the anxious mind. It simply waits for the moment when the noise subsides to reveal its voice. It is in this space of delicacy that we discover the true guidance of life is not outside, but within us. Many have grown accustomed to looking for grand signs, immediate answers, or spectacular confirmations. But deep consciousness manifests in almost imperceptible details. A sense of calm when facing a choice, a subtle shiver when hearing a word, sudden clarity in the midst of silence. Bruce Lipton explains that our perceptions shape our biology. When we learn to listen to these subtle signals, we change not only our interpretation of the world, but also the way our cells respond to the environment. The body recognizes coherence even before the mind formulates explanations. Neville Goddard would add, "Imagination is the channel through which these whispers become reality." When we notice a gentle inspiration and accept it as true, we are planting the seed of a new timeline. The whispers are not illusions, they are invitations to remember what already exists in potential. Listening to deep consciousness is a practice of trust. It is choosing to honor simplicity over complexity, silence over haste. The more we cultivate this listening, the more we realize the universe has never been silent. We were simply too distracted to hear. The biologist Rupert Sheldrake proposed the concept of morphic fields, invisible patterns that organize behaviors, forms, and collective memories. According to him, every individual choice resonates within this field, reinforcing or weakening patterns that affect everyone. Thus, when you change your personal frequency, it is not only your life that transforms, but also the collective fabric we all share. Imagine the morphic field as a living library. Every emotion felt, every thought repeated, every conscious gesture is like a page written in this great book of humanity. What you choose to vibrate today becomes a reference available for others to access tomorrow. Your presence is not isolated, it is contribution. Bruce Lipton adds that our beliefs and emotional states shape not only our biology, but also the environment around us. By altering the cellular field, we expand a signature that silently influences those nearby. We are walking transmitters of frequencies that others pick up on, often without even realizing it. Joe Dispenza demonstrates that states of heart coherence create electromagnetic patterns so clear they can synchronize entire groups. This explains why environments charged with fear or love deeply affect those who enter them. It is not just psychological, it is physical, measurable. Recognizing this interconnection calls us to responsibility. Each time we choose presence over hurry, trust over fear, we are not only healing ourselves, but also offering the collective field a vibrational alternative. What you sustain within yourself becomes accessible to the world. Personality is the set of masks we learn to wear in order to be accepted. It is born from experiences of pain, fear, and rejection that shaped our defenses. Authenticity, however, is the direct expression of being, without effort to please or protect. It is the clean vibration without interference that the field recognizes as truth. When we operate through personality, we seek external validation. The gaze of others becomes our compass, and our choices bend to expectations that never cease. This search, though subtle, emits a frequency of lack. As a result, we attract situations that reinforce this sense of insufficiency. Authenticity, on the other hand, does not need to prove anything. It is not performative, but silent. It is like a river that follows its course without needing to justify its direction. When we inhabit this place, we release such natural coherence that the field responds with synchronicities and unexpected connections. Bruce Lipton affirms that unconscious beliefs shape biology. When we play repeated personalities, the body carries the chemistry of contraction and stress. But when we choose authenticity, we create an inner environment of safety that reprograms our cells for expansion. Neville Goddard would add, "When we assume the state of who we already are, external reality has no choice but to reflect that truth." Being authentic does not mean rejecting personality, but recognizing its masks and choosing to release them when they no longer serve. It is the act of remembering essence, again and again, until living without pretense becomes the natural state. In linear time, life is seen as a rigid sequence, past, present, and future aligned in a straight line. Within this logic, we believe we will only achieve something after much effort, predictable stages, and prolonged waiting. It is the vision that sustains urgency, anxiety, and the constant feeling of being late. Quantum time, on the other hand, does not obey this same logic. It is not chronological, but vibrational. What determines the experience is not when on the clock, but how in the state of consciousness. By changing the internal frequency, we access possibilities that, in linear time, would seem distant. Bruce Lipton shows us that our perceptions shape not only our choices, but also the cellular biology that sustains each state. When we vibrate fear, the body closes into survival. When we vibrate trust, the body opens to expansion. Thus, each breath already repositions us in a different time. Neville Goddard translates this as living in the end, feeling now the desired reality as if it were already fulfilled. It is not about waiting for the future, but about bringing the future into the present through coherent emotion. Quantum time shortens distances because it collapses probabilities according to the state being lived. Living in quantum time is ceasing to measure life by the clock and beginning to feel it as rhythm. It is abandoning the idea of not yet and entering the experience of already is. In this place, what we call a miracle is simply the natural response of a field that follows the beat of our vibration. Creating consciously does not mean manipulating reality, but allowing consciousness to express itself without blockages. It is a deep shift. Instead of struggling to conquer something outside, we recognize that the seed already exists within us, and our role is simply to nurture the right conditions for it to bloom. Just as a flower does not force its blooming but responds to sun, water, and time, conscious creation is less about effort and more about coherence. The quantum field does not respond to anxious intentions, but to the vibrational consistency of someone who already recognizes themselves as the source of what they seek. Bruce Lipton teaches that changing unconscious beliefs alters the inner environment and consequently genetic expression. This means that by living in coherence, our body and our cells already begin to align with the desired state. Neville Goddard compliments, living in the end is assuming now the consciousness of what is already true, letting the field simply reflect that state. Conscious creation does not demand perfection, but returning again and again to the center, returning to the breath, returning to trust. It is this repeated movement that strengthens new neural connections, creates a new vibrational signature, and in due time, collapses new lines of reality. The paradigm of conscious creation invites us to stop being tireless seekers and to become consistent emitters. When we stop asking for proof and start emitting presence, reality ceases to be a test to be overcome and becomes a mirror of the essence we already carry. Bruce Lipton reminds us that our beliefs are not just abstract ideas. They modulate hormones, turn genes on and off, and define how each cell perceives its environment. If the inner state is one of seeking and lack, the entire body translates that into biological language. But when perception changes, when emotion aligns with trust and presence, the body begins to operate under another code, releasing energy once trapped in survival. Neville Goddard offers us the complementary key. We do not attract what we desire. We attract what we have already accepted as true within. Living in the end means embodying now the consciousness of the chosen reality, instead of waiting for external signs that it will come. At this point, seeking dissolves because there is no longer separation between what we want and what we are. This synthesis between science and spirituality shows us that we do not need to chase after proof to believe. Inner coherence itself is the proof. External reality is not a judge deciding if we are ready. It is only the reflection of the signature we sustain. The practice is not in accumulating more techniques, but in returning again and again to the silent essence that observes and receives. This patient repetition creates a new vibrational set point, a new pattern of normality in body and mind. This is how the frequency of reception replaces that of seeking. The final invitation is simple yet profound. When you pause, breathe, and trust, you are not merely calming the mind, you are reprogramming your biology, realigning your consciousness, and allowing the quantum field to mirror who you already are. From this place, life ceases to be a race and becomes communion.